Welcome, everybody. Let me give you the orientation. What we're going to do is, I find that this works better if we mute everyone. And if you have a question, you can put it in the chat, and then we'll just take a break every so often and read the chats. Today's presentation, like we said in the email, just by way of very brief introduction, there is a custom of having a Yizkor A service, which is a memorial service, and we'll go through the text of that and you know exactly what that is. Today is Memorial Day, and many on the meeting here have loved ones who are deceased veterans in general. I have a whole class that I like to give at JCCs. They're basically the irony of the fact that Hanukkah and Christmas, that have nothing to do with each other, are somehow intrinsically connected to each other, and Shavuos and Memorial Day, which have a lot to do with each other, where Shavuos, the holiday itself, is the celebration of the giving of the Torah. But because it is a major holiday, we do have a Yizkor service. There have been times in the recent past that the second day of Shavuos, where we have the Yizkor service, has fallen on Memorial Day, and nobody realized it. But here we are. We realize it, and the idea behind this talk, this presentation, is to give everybody some inspiration, just to connect to each other, of course, with everybody being isolated as we are, but to give everybody some inspiration and education as far as Yizkor, to make it more meaningful. And in the end, we'll go through the whole Yizkor service is very brief, especially at home, and go through the text of that and give people actually handheld instructions on how to do it on your own. Yizkor is going to be on Shabbat morning, Saturday morning. Friday is also Yom Tov. The cemetery will be closed for visitors. We'll get that word out as we can. But also as far as printing any material, just try to do that before Friday. And here we go. So we are going to start with a disclaimer, and the disclaimer is a very important one, which is the heavy burden. So there's some debate about whether or not Yizkor should be said during the first year after a death in the family. And the argument against that, you know, we need to not say Yizkor, is that it could be so emotionally overwhelming for a person. The emotions are so raw that it's just not in the spirit of the holiday. It is at the end of the day a holiday. It's a little bit of an irony that we do this on a holiday, which we'll address that. As for whether or not somebody should say it, you know, that's up to each person individually. The reason why I start with this is that I do want to recognize the fact that there are many people on this group who are dealing with this very raw grief and raw emotion, and just want to recognize your pain and let you know that we are with you in that pain. Okay, so a few questions. So one is Yizkor about mourning? Like we just said, it's a little bit ironic that we would have a mournful service as part of a holiday service. So maybe there's something more to it. And then also, is Yizkor, sort of a philosophical question, is Yizkor for the deceased, or is it for the living, or is it for both? Okay, so face value. Here we go. This is the text, the main text of the Yizkor service. Like many services, there are introductory prayers, or sort of communal prayers, but the main meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the Yizkor service is as follows. It's God, please remember my relative, you say their name, who has gone to his or her world, because I will, without making a vow, give charity on his or her behalf. In the merit of this, may his or her soul be bound in the bond of life, along with the souls of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and all the righteous in the Garden of Eden. That is the main part of Yizkor. Okay, yeah, any questions? Okay, so I have a few. Like I said, you can chat them in if you want, but I have a few here. So it goes like this. First off is, why are we giving charity? And all I mean by that is that charity is a beautiful thing. I'm not, right? We're a nonprofit organization. We thrive on charity, and it's a beautiful thing. But what does it have to do with a loved one? Like, it just seems like a little bit out of place. And if anything, it almost seems like a bribe. It's sort of like, got to remember my relative because I'm going to give charity on their behalf. So it's just like, what is that? Where did that come from? And then also, what does that even mean, that in the merit of this, right? The way that we said it was that they got to remember my relative because I'm going to give charity on their behalf. And in the merit of this, and the merit of this charity, then allow their soul to be bound in the bond of life and connected to the souls of all the righteous in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. So, like, what does all that mean? Okay, so we asked the question. We're going to get back to that. The way we're going to do this is we're going to ask a few questions. We're going to put them on hold. We're going to put them on the side burner, and then come back to them, and the whole thing is going to all come together in the end. So we asked the question at the beginning: is Yizkor for the living, or is it for the deceased? So let's go through that. So the argument, of course, for the living would be that we're inspired by their memory, which we'll come back to that later as well. But there definitely is some, I don't mean selfish benefit, but for lack of a better term, we'll call it that. Although, of course, it's very noble. We're comforted by their memory. I mean, that's the bottom line. That there is a comfort to us in being connected to our loved ones, even after they've left us. And the other reasons people can, maybe think of how it would be that saying Yizkor, would help us. As far as the argument for the deceased, so we're going to go through, there's going to be sort of a face value argument of how it's the Yizkor is for the deceased, which it clearly is. And then we're going to go into more of a deeper realm. So, of course, the argument would be that what if we never took time to remember them? That would be very sad, right? It would be a very sad overall. It would be a very sad Jewish life if our attitude was that once somebody passes away, then that's the end of it, and we have no more connection to them. We would be disconnected from previous generations. We would be like, it would be a very sad existence. And okay, a deeper reason. So here we go. We're going to get into a discussion on the afterlife, body and soul, and reward and punishment, more reward and punishment of body and soul. So here we go. A few questions. One is, what will I be like, right? In other words, we think of ourselves, and we're in this world, we're in this existence. So what's it going to be like after we pass away? What's my existence going to be like? The other question is, what will it be like? It meaning the afterlife. Okay, so who am I, right? So this is an interesting verse. It has a lot of meaning to it. This is from Job. I'll read it in English, which basically where he says, after my flesh, this is all peeled away. In other words, when I no longer have this physical existence. So then what? Then it's going to be that without my flesh, I will see God. I will perceive God. I will understand God. And there's a whole lot that we learn from this. There's actually a different way of reading this verse, which is not without my flesh, but from my flesh. That a person can gain tremendous inspiration by seeing the complexity of the human body. And it can be very inspirational that we realize the great wisdom of the Creator, seeing how everything in the body, works so perfectly together, and seeing how when one thing goes wrong, that it really all, oftentimes, unfortunately, a lot can happen wrong. But for the purposes of this talk, right, and which is really the more exact translation, that it's really without my flesh, I will see God. So what does that mean? That means that when we just have our soul, when we're just a soul, it's not that we're dead and we're gone and there's nothing. It's the exact opposite. There's a greater ability to perceive. There's all of the filters and the distractions of the physical world and the physical realm are removed from us, and were able to perceive God in this new amazing way. Okay, now what will it be like? What will, so we have that. Again, a few things here we're gonna table. So you have that the existence in the next world is an existence of more understanding, of more knowledge, of more perception, of greater perception, of sharper perception. So now what is this world to come? So here is the best analogy I have for it. And this is from the Talmud, and it's a story which most people are familiar with, which is Joseph and his brothers. So Joseph and his brothers, there was some type of jealousy, there was some type of argument. They end up selling him. He gets sold as a slave a few different ways. He ends up as a slave in Egypt. He ends up in prison for something that he didn't do. He interprets the dreams of a couple of other prisoners. A few years later, he ends up being called to Pharaoh to interpret his dreams. He tells him it's going to be a feast and then a famine, and gives him a whole idea about how to store up for that. Pharaoh says, okay, right, this Jewish kid knows what he's doing, and he basically becomes the CEO of Egypt. And the viceroy, he's the second to the king, he's in Egypt, and there's a famine. So now the whole world is coming to Egypt, which became the breadbasket of the world because they were storing up during the 7 years of plenty. And his brothers come and they don't recognize him, and he recognizes them, but he even speaks through a translator. So they don't even realize that he understands, that he speaks Hebrew and understands them. And all this funny stuff is happening to them. They're talking to this viceroy, which nobody really gets that far into the palace, and why did they even have to talk to him? He's very harsh with them. He's asking about their father. He's asking about their brother. He puts them in prison. He lets all but one out of prison. He sends them home. They get home. They see that the money that they paid is still there. Their father wants them to go back and buy more. They say, we can't go back without Benjamin. Back and forth, back and forth. They go there with Benjamin. They end up having a party with the viceroy, which is crazy. They end up getting sent back home. On the way home, they get stopped and accused of stealing, his goblet. And sure enough, there it is in Benjamin's sack. So now Benjamin is in trouble. The brothers promised their father they would bring him back safely. So now they have their, bag of worries over here. And they basically, try to make a deal with Joseph that they will, that Yehuda will be in Benjamin's place. He'll be Joseph's slave forever, literally. He's willing to be a slave for the rest of his life in order to make good on his promise to his father and bring Benjamin back home safely. So Joseph sees this and he realizes that they are going to stand up for their brother. Everything is wonderful. And he says to them, Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? What do his brothers respond? Nothing. His brothers could not answer him because they were confounded by his presence. It was a very simple answer, by the way. The answer was yes. And in fact, the answer was even, it was almost a silly question, because the whole thing was that they were talking about their father, right? My father didn't want Benjamin to come. We promised our father, right? They said our father a million times. So it was a very easy question for them to answer, and they couldn't answer it. Why? Because they were confounded by his presence. So in the Talmud, Rabbi Lazar has a commentary on this, and he said that when he would get to this verse, he would cry, because the rebuke of flesh and blood evokes this kind of response. They couldn't answer the rebuke of Joseph, who, okay, he was a powerful man. He was the second to the king, but he was their brother. And at the end of the day, he's one man. And they couldn't respond to that rebuke. So how much more so the rebuke of the Holy One, blessed be he. Now, just to review here, what was the rebuke? What did Joseph say to them? Right? If you look at the verse, did he say to them, why did you sell me? Did he say to them, why didn't you trust me? Did he say to them, well, how could you do this to our father? What did he say to them? What was the big rebuke? He told them all these funny things that were happening to you. You know why all those funny things are happening? Because I'm not just some Egyptian guy who's the second to the king. I'm Joseph. I'm your brother. And this whole thing was to get you to take responsibility for your other brother, for Benjamin. So the rebuke wasn't like the way we think of it in terms of, yelling at them or, however you want to think of it. It was just a matter of that they were confronted with the truth. And the truth is, if he wanted to hurt them, he would have. If he really had it against them, now would be the time to have something against them. And he didn't. And so then they realized their sin. Okay, so what does this mean, though, that okay, they couldn't handle Joseph's rebuke, and therefore the rebuke of God himself is going to be so much more intense? So what Rabbi Lazar is telling us is that basically that's what the world to come is. The world to come is that, again, we already said that our soul is going to be more capable of perceiving. It's going to be a sharper perception. So that us, as a sharper, more perceptive us, me, I, you, right, is going to be confronted by God with the truth of our actions, and it's going to be really intense. So just to talk about the negative for a moment, how would we describe the emotion of the brothers? Right? What were they feeling? They were confounded by his presence. What were they feeling? So if I had to say it in one word, I would say regret. They were feeling regret. They regretted treating their brother the way that they did. And this is really the way that I like to sum up the entire existence of the Jewish afterlife. So not in terms of like heaven and hell, that there's fire and angels and this, that, and the other. There's actually a good joke about that. I hate to joke on a serious topic, but just for a little bit of comic relief. So you can pick your favorite politician, and so he has a dream, and the angel comes to him in a dream and says that you're going to die tomorrow, but because you were such a wonderful public servant, so God's going to let you choose whether you want to go to heaven or hell, and I'm going to show you. I'll give you a tour. So he shows him heaven. And it's a nice place, heaven. It's got air conditioning. It's got nice people, nice neighbors, very nice. And he goes to hell. And hell is a party. Hell is an absolute party. It's got food and music and friends, and it was a great place. So he says, angel, send me straight to hell. So the next day he dies, and he goes to hell. And it's torture. It's horrible. It was the worst thing he's ever been to, ever. And he sees the angel. And he says to him, I don't understand. Yesterday, this was a party. Today, this is torture. And the angel says, what do you not understand? Yesterday was a campaign. This is post-election. Okay, but the point is like this, is that the Jewish idea of the afterlife is not a matter of this one place or the other, or that it's a party or air conditioning or fire or whatever. The way that what we see from the story of Joseph and his brothers, and what we see from the Talmudic commentary on it, is that it's accomplishment and regret. What that means is, though, that when we're in the totally non-physical realm and our intellect is sharper than it ever has been, with no interference at all, so then we can see the situation in its entirety. We're confronting God, right? That was the way that Job said it. He said that when I won't have it, I will see God, I'll confront God, I'll understand God. And what Rabbi Lazar from the Talmud was telling us was that it's use the term rebuke if you want, but the point is that it's God confronting us with the truth of our actions. So what that means is that if you think about it, if we did something good, right, which of course we all do, so you do something good, and this is every action. Like think of it as going through a movie and just seeing every moment of your life. So then the good things that we do, and you see the truth of that action, there are some times where we do good things that to people around us, it looks like we did something good, but they don't realize what we're struggling with. I mean, we did something really, heroic, okay? So God knows that, and we're going to be able to see that, and we're going to see the big picture, and we're going to be able to see not only the good thing that we did, but we're going to be able to see the outgrowth of that good thing, that whoever it was that we helped and what they were able to do because we helped them, and see that entire picture. That's going to be a tremendous sense of accomplishment. That is the greatest gift that we could get. That is the greatest reward, better than going to whatever heaven looks like, right? That's the idea. And then, of course, it works the other way also, for some things that we do wrong, we're going to regret doing them wrong. And it's also a very perfect system of justice, because instead of saying, well, you're good, you go here, you're bad, you go there, which could, in theory, negate 49% of something that everybody does, it's a matter of everything that we do. Everything that we do. If it was a little thing, we're going to feel a little good. If it was a great thing, we're going to feel euphoric. If it was a little bad thing, we're going to feel bad. If it was a really bad thing, we're going to really feel bad, right? But the idea is that the world to come has this inherent built-in reward and punishment system of the reward is the very, and also if you think about it, if you think in terms of accomplishment and regret, those are both feelings that are very spiritual, non-physical feelings. When we feel a sense of accomplishment for whatever it was that we did, that we feel good about, that is a very non-physical, very spiritual, very wonderful feeling. And then of course the same with regret. So so that is, before we move on, right, that is the world to come. In other words, if somebody were to say to you, what do Jewish people believe about the afterlife? So then the way I would say it in one sentence is, we believe that there's reward and punishment, and it comes in the form of that we go through our actions with God, and we feel really good about the stuff that we did good. We feel good about the stuff that we did, that was good. We feel bad about the stuff that was kind of bad. We feel really bad about the stuff that was really bad, right? But it's reward and punishment. It is accomplishment and regret. Okay, now, but what there won't be are opportunities and challenges. In this world, we have those. In this world, we are faced constantly have the gift of opportunities and challenges. And sometimes those challenges seem unbearable, but we know we can handle them, but we have constant challenges and opportunities. Okay, we've said that in the world to come, the greatest reward is a sense of accomplishment, which of course we can't do once we pass on. And we also said that we're going to reap the benefits and and detriments of our actions. So based on all that, is there anything we could actually accomplish after we die? And the answer is going to be, we'll get back to that. Okay, so we will get back to that, right? But the idea is that before we put that on the side burner, just to review very briefly, when we speak in terms of the reward of the afterlife, what we mean is a sense of accomplishment for what we have done. And the question that we asked is there anything that we can do after we pass on, or it's sort of like whatever you have, sealed package, and and then you go. Okay, so I could have picked any basketball card, but I am a Chicago native here, and I did grow up in the 90s. So you look at basketball. I'm not a basketball fan, by the way. And so there's obviously, you get credit for goals, right? That's an important thing. But then there's also this thing called an assist. So which one's better, the goal or the assist? So of course we would say the goal, right? Because goal's better. Okay, so back to the Talmud here, and actually the same Rabbi Elazar. The one who causes someone to do a mitzvah is greater than the one who does the mitzvah. The assist is better than the goal. I'll give you an example. Let's say I were to say to all of you right now that, we have this indigent family, and it's a sad case. There was a death in the family, and we have these types of things all the time, right? And we need, I'm asking everybody, please pitch in, and and let's take care of this family. So who did more? Me, who didn't give a dime, but told you about the situation and maybe said something that that inspired you, or you all who gave the money? So most people would say the person who gave the money did the better thing, right? So how could it possibly be that it's a greater thing? The person in my role over here, in this theoretical story here, the person in my role, the fundraiser, so to speak, in my role is doing more than the donor. Like, how is that even possible? But if we think in terms of accomplishment and regret, so then it's going to make a little bit more sense. Why? Because, well, I'll say it real quickly. In one sentence, the reason is because the person who gave the money accomplished helping the person. The person who inspired that person to give the money accomplished inspiring that person to do a mitzvah and helping the person who needed the money. Maybe not directly helping the person who needed the money, but the person who needed the money got the money they needed, right? So they got helped. And the person who gave the money helped them, right? You know, they did, right? They did a beautiful thing. And the person who inspired all that, right? The person who did all that, who sort of can look back at that with a sense of accomplishment is the person who inspired them to do that. So now we're going to bring it all together. The only growth that we can have in the next world is going to be based on the after effects of what we do while we're alive and who we inspire. So that's a very real thing. In other words, when we speak in terms of accomplishment, think in terms of a soul, of somebody who's passed on, who's sitting there with God and going through their life, and God saying, here's what you accomplished. There are accomplishments that are going to be far after they pass on, far after their life ended, because there were things that they did in their life. They were able to put certain balls in motion, inspire certain people, create certain scenarios that helped other people or inspired other people or taught other people. And right, and that is an accomplishment. There's a graphic I like to use. I don't have it in this slide, but there's a graphic I like to use. I believe it was a coin minted by the U.S. government after the lunar landing, and it had John Kennedy's image on it. And it said something like, he gave us the moon and taught us a dream, or something like that. So what do you mean he gave you the moon? Right? He passed away 6 years before we landed on the moon. So the answer is, though, that he was the one who got up there and said, we're going to, there's nothing political over here, right? Right? He was the one who got up there and said to the country, right, you know, we're going, by the end of the decade, we're going to put a man on the moon, right? And that was like the inspiration. That's how he did it, right? So that's the type of thing we can relate to, right? People intrinsically connect President Kennedy to the lunar landing, even though it happened after he passed on. The reality is the same with all of us. It's the same with all of our deceased relatives. There are so many of us who have relatives who are constantly a source of strength for us, or a source of inspiration, or a story we heard from our grandmother, or something that we saw our grandfather, you know, model, or even, you know, closer generations than that. So all of those things, that's the soul of that person is experiencing that sense of accomplishment because they truly accomplished that, even though the fruit of that accomplishment is years, decades after they passed away. Okay, charity is an important mitzvah. We're going to get to that a little, just to tie it in together with Yizkor. Now, in terms of Yizkor, okay, well, hold on, right? So, right, we said the one who inspires somebody to give is better than the one who gave it because they accomplished both, right? They accomplished the giving and they accomplished the inspiration of, you know, they inspired the giver to give. Okay, now who inspired that person? Good, okay, we said that. So, right, the reward of the inspirer is greater than the inspired, okay? So, to put it all together, it makes sense to take the occasion of a Jewish holiday. On each holiday has its own major role in Judaism. Of course, Yom Kippur we think of as the Day of Atonement and the holiest day on the calendar. But we said that we also do Yizkor on Passover, which is a holiday where we became God's people. Shavuos is a holiday where God gave us the Torah and showed us how to live a proper Jewish life and showed us what he wants from us. And so that itself is a celebration. And Sukkos is the celebration of being in the desert, which was not one day, but it was a 40-year-long experience where we were just sheltered and loved and cared for by God. And it celebrates that. All of these very, very inspirational holidays. So we take that time to remember our loved ones during that occasion, to come to shul, to be inspired by the synagogue experience, to be inspired by the holiday, and to be inspired by the memory of our loved ones. And when we speak in terms of in the merit of this, when it comes to the Yizkor service, what we're basically saying is that because I'm here at Yizkor pledging charity, or I have already given charity for, you know, in anticipation of this moment. I did it because of the memory of my loved one. I did it because of the inspiration that I gained from them. So this is truly a gift to my loved one. I am helping them in a way that which is really the only way we can help them, but it's a very significant way that we can help them. But I am helping them in a very significant way. I am helping them because I am creating a greater sense of accomplishment than they already had, because I am allowing them to inspire me to come to synagogue, to be part of the experience, and to give charity. And those mitzvot are all not only the mitzvot that I'm doing, but they are a great merit. They're a great accomplishment. They're a great gift to the soul of my deceased loved one. So somebody would say, is there something we can do for somebody after they pass away? The answer is absolutely. What we can do is that we can allow their memory to inspire us, and we can do all types of acts of kindness and mitzvot in their memory. And by in their memory, what we mean is, because they inspired us to do this, that this is their accomplishment as well. There are a lot of take-home messages from this. I apologize, it's a little bit difficult to read. I meant to contrast it more. But one is just the context of accomplishment and regret can be a whole different take on life. And to think in terms of what I'm going to do right now, is this going to make me proud? Only one you have to answer to, right? You and God. Is this going to make me proud, what I'm doing right now? And sometimes that can carry the day, because it can keep us away from all types of peer pressure, or maybe we know how people perceive what we're doing, and they might think that we're being lazy, or they might think whatever, but they don't know that it's calculated. And so the fact that I know that I'm going to look back at this and be proud of what I'm doing, that can be very inspirational. In the same way the other way. Sometimes we can get in the heat of an argument, and we can think that we're right. And the truth is, if we would take a step back and say, if I look back at this 2 months from now, am I going to be proud of what I said to this person, you know, when the whole thing blows over? And that can really help us grow as a person. The lasting inspiration that we create in our lifetimes is also an important thing. This can inspire us to teach other people, to help other people, and hopefully we ourselves can be inspired by this. Okay, as for Yizkor, this is the nuts and bolts. All of that was the philosophy behind it. I hope you found it a new take. And if it was concepts you're already familiar with, then oftentimes from review, we do find deeper insights and greater inspiration. So hopefully you had that experience. As far as the checklist, nuts and bolts, Yizkor, Rabbi, I'm not going to synagogue because I'm over 65, or the synagogues are closed, or whatever it might be. Saturday morning is Yizkor. I want to say Yizkor for my loved ones. What do I do? Okay, so 3 easy steps. One is sometime before sunset on Thursday. Now, why sunset on Thursday? Because Shavuos is a 2-day holiday. It starts at sunset on Thursday, and Friday, that would be the first day. And then Shabbat from sunset Friday to Saturday is the second day of Shavuos. So in terms of the Yizkor service, and it's a holiday that has all the rules of Shabbat. It's not like a minor holiday like Hanukkah where we continue to do work. It has all the rules of Shabbat. So please don't print. I'm going to send it out by email, by the way. Everybody register. That's why I had everybody register. I'll send it out to you by email. I'll send you the text that we had in the at the beginning of the slide. I actually have it in Hebrew and in English, and I actually have what's called the transliteration, which means that you're reading English, but if you would read it, you're saying Hebrew. And a little bit of a difference in terms of just the slight differences in grammar between talking about a man or a woman or a father or a mother or a sister, brother, all that. So you'll get that sheet, and you can do whatever is appropriate. But okay, so beforehand, sometime before sunset Thursday night, to give charity. I would just take the opportunity to mention that the theoretical case that I mentioned is theoretical in the terms that it's not active right now, but we do, as a cemetery, do a lot of charity and do help a lot of people who can't afford burial for a loved one. So please consider that. And also sometime before sunset on Thursday to print out the Yizkor prayers, which, like I said, I will send them to you. And then at some point on Shabbat morning, to read them, and for the mindset to be more the mindset of the inspiration from that loved one, not so much mourning that loved one. And as we mentioned at the beginning, that there are people who are still very much in the active, raw mourning process. But people are multidimensional, and to focus more on just the way that the things that that person taught us. And there are people on this group that we may be speaking about a loss of a child, but we can learn from everybody. There are certainly things that we learn from our children, and ways that they act, and ways that they have inspired us to do all types of things. So really it's a matter of the focus on the inspiration. And then just finally, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to wish you all a lifetime and beyond of accomplishment and inspiration. If anybody has any questions,